300 days in a row powered only by renewable energy. And at the beginning of this year, he launched his plan to make his country one of the first to fully decarbonize. Please welcome to the stage a man who epitomizes the climate decade approach, President Carlos Alvarado Quesada of the Republic of Costa Rica.
Hi. Thank you for having us. Morning, and it's great being here to give you and share some remarks on climate crisis, actually. And I used to work in the corporate business for a while, and I remember we used to say in consumer goods, there is the first moment of truth and the second moment of truth. I don't know if some of you have heard of that. Well, on the first moment of truth, let me fast forward you on this. Is it possible or not to do something about climate crisis? And I believe that's a bit the role that Costa Rica has in this, to make us know, yes, it is possible to do things. As it was said, Costa Rica runs on 99.5% of its electricity being clean and renewable. We managed to reverse deforestation in less than 20 years from 20% of forest coverage to now 52%. And our commitment to 2030 is to go to 60%. And we are going with others to do commitments similar, for in the 2030, they go to 30% of forest coverage. So if we want to talk about the first moment of truth, confidence, try something new, yes, it is possible to do this. But I believe the hard part is the second moment of truth. Because people will say, well, Costa Rica is really small. What's going to be the real effect on climate crisis? What is it that governments need to do? We need to be clear about our goals, provide confidence that needs to happen. And why? Because the climate crisis is not only about environment. It's about transforming the economies. And when people get to talk about transforming economies, the economies get they get like a bit shaky, fear, transformation. What's it going to be? Is it going to be good for business? And then that leads to fear, and then fear leads to opposition sometimes. So governments need to be very clear, very bold about it. We launched on February our decarbonization plan for 2050 to fully decarbonize our economy. And we had several strategies on that. We're going to build 2 electric trains, one for cargo, one for an urban area. We passed a bill to incentive the importation of electric vehicles. But currently in Costa Rica are 28 times cheaper the fuel for a kilometer than fossil fuels. Also, we're changing our public transportation. We're scaling up agriculture in terms of adaptation and mitigation, not only to reduce emissions, but because those products become more competitive in the market. So it's also good for business. So my first insight is to advance rapidly to that second moment of truth. Governments must provide confidence, a clear plan to set the rules. But it is not government the one that's only going to change this. So what's the role of business in here? Because it's not the government that's going to provide those jobs. It's not only the government that's going to do those investments. And it's not only government that's going to make that change happen and come into effect. So we need business to be part of this with the same confidence, with the same clarity as the young generations are providing the world now. Very strong clarity about what the pathway is. Also, I believe we have a problem in the narrative. And here business can support the challenge. Why on the narrative? Because we keep talking on the science about 1.5 degrees we need to change. We start talking about this jargon. It's sometimes distant from the reality of the people. And narrative, it has to be about truth based on science, but also need to address the heart of the people, the inspiration of the people. For example, yesterday I had the honor to meet the president of Marshall Islands. And when they talk about how they're preparing themselves for massive flooding of their country, having their water mantles contaminated with salt water, there's no other way than to feel empathy about that and the urge to do something about that. But that narrative is not reaching most of the people around the world. Or when we get to see the fires in the forests. But then also the solutions come from nature. Yesterday we get to share an image from NASA from the past months that nature-based solutions on Costa Rica with new forests, with responsible agriculture, with a business model of growth, growing forest to trigger ecotourism, has managed us to grow and at the same time had the least level of fires in a tropical zone. So it is not only good for ethics, but it's good for business. Very good for business. Our decarbonization plan that's meant to happen on 2050, the full decarbonization, its aim is to disengage the curbs of growth. That means to keep growth going, keep employments going, and reduce dramatically the curve of emissions. We are targeting to have the disengage of both curves happen on 2032. And that's our target, and definitely eliminate fossil fuels by 2050. And that's the math that we have reached in our plan. In terms of narratives, I don't see any challenge more formidable, a greater challenge and a greater risk as the climate crisis for our generation, for my generation, and for my son's generation. When I think about it, when my son is going to be my age, that's going to be around 2050. And by then, I'm going to be my dad's age. And now I'm doing everything possible, and I mean now, everything on my hands to make change happen. Because in 2050, when he's going to be my age, he's going to ask me, Dad, ¿hiciste lo necesario? Did you do all in your hands to change the situation? Because you knew about it back then. And I'm working to have a good answer for him on 2050. But that answer needs to start now. So if Costa Rica can provide something, is that second moment of truth based on government clarity, clear plan, delivering results, and also recruiting allies. And that's why we need the private sector as a formidable ally. Also, because current, but especially future citizens, future consumers will be demanding this. It's not optional anymore. And also, it's one of the greatest challenges ever possible imagined by humanity. So why don't tackle it directly? No strings attached, no fear, but faith on the human spirit, on the human heart, of the human clarity of mind. That's why I'm confident about the future, very confident about the future. And if a mid-income country like Costa Rica has managed to do things like that, imagine what we all can do together. So, thank you for having us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.